Hey guys, it's me Seren back with another video. This is going to be a review video for the third episode of Watchmen on HBO. As previously, there will be spoilers in this video, and this video, similar to last week, will also be done in the good, the bad, and the ugly format, which is more like good and the bad because I am still really enjoying this show and I have not really hit upon any serious issues with it as of yet, so it's just going to be mostly good and a little bit of bad at the end, but even that we'll get there, and no ugly. So let me go ahead and dive right in and start with the good. The former second Silk Spectre is introduced in this episode, which focuses mainly on her. Silk Spectre is a character from the original Watchmen. She's a former vigilante superhero who was initially involved with Dr. Manhattan before getting into a relationship with the second iteration of the superhero, Night Owl. An interesting thing about the Watchmen universe is that since none of the superheroes actually have powers except Dr. Manhattan, people often take up the mantle of former heroes after they die or retire. So you have the second Silk Spectre, you have Night Owl 2, things of that nature. It also happens a lot in terms of like families. Like the first Silk Spectre was our Silk Spectre, Laurie Blake. It was her mom. So there's a lot of just like, oh, if somebody dies or retires, picking up the mantle, because you don't necessarily have to have powers to be a superhero in this universe. Anybody could be anything. So that's something that I've always liked about Watchmen, and I like that they're following along with that canon in this HBO series. So the second Silk Spectre, former, she's introduced as FBI agent Laurie Blake, who's trying to solve the murder of the police chief. She's this really, really just tough as nails, older character who's obviously going to be this foil to Regina King's Angela or Sister Night. We see several times throughout this episode that she's trying to kind of like pull Sister Night's card, that she's kind of trying to feel Regina King out, feel her Angela out, and see, you know, how involved is she in the police chief's murder, you know, whether or not she was there. We as the audience know she was there, what type of involvement she has with the police chief, which I'm going to get to a little bit later on in this review. I almost kind of feel like in a certain type of way, she represents the audience of trying to sort of figure out exactly what is going on here, and also because of her prior knowledge of the Watchmen universe, since she is a canon character from the original Watchmen. So I really, really, really enjoyed that this character got introduced. She is extremely bitter and really is played as someone that used to believe in something but has since lost their faith. This is demonstrated through a joke that she tells throughout the entire episode, through these sort of like cuts of her attempting to speak to Dr. Manhattan on Mars, which was another very cool concept, sort of similar to the reparations, DNA, genealogy kiosks that I really enjoyed last week. I like this one as well. These phone booths, I think it's called like the Blue Network, where ordinary citizens can call Dr. Manhattan, who has abandoned Earth and has abandoned his humanity and has gone to live on Mars. And it's almost like sending prayers up to him, almost like he is a real god, you know, like he is this deity. And I really like seeing that in the implication that she uses these phones regularly. She calls him regularly. She leaves him these messages. I think it's also implied that she like tells him these various kind of quote unquote jokes. And I thought it was like a really, really interesting, again, world building, character building for a character that we have just met, and really establishing her background in the universe, as well as her bitterness as somebody that was, you know, involved in what we're seeing now and has really suffered the consequences and seen the outcome when it goes wrong. I absolutely love this joke she told, which is based on things that happened in her life, in her real life experiences with Night Owl, with Ozymandias, and Dr. Manhattan, who ultimately have made different decisions and actions in their, you know, sort of vigilantism or superheroism, however you want to think about it, but who Laurie Blake, who Blake has decided are pretty much all on the wrong side, despite the fact that they think that they are the good guys. And after her past, we see that she's extremely opposed to crime-fighting vigilantes, and also that she does not approve of the police wearing masks. This episode also focuses more on the political and legislative side of the cops wearing masks. We learn more about how the fallout from the attack on police by 7K led to the entire police force quitting due to fear of retaliation against their families, and that the police then had an inability to recruit new members because they could not guarantee, their safety. They could not promise their safety. So we learned that the masks were introduced to ensure the safety of the police, but this does form an irony in essentially making police the new vigilantes. And it's just a very interesting turn of fate and a really cool concept to play with. We now have a former Watchman, the second Silk Spectre, fighting superheroes herself in the form of Laurie Blake, while a former cop took on a vigilante persona of Sister Night. It's almost like an old-fashioned switcheroo situation where we have these two people that are, again, almost flip sides of a similar coin, and seeing how they explore that. This was another good episode that fleshes out more of the backstory and the history of what we're watching now. Unless something happens really drastic moving forward, I have to say that I think the pacing right now is excellent on this show. Even an episode like this one that introduced a new character and doesn't focus on our main Sister Night manages to move the main story along while also establishing ties to the original Watchmen, which I'm sure is not easy to do with a story that is playing out in the future and with what appears to be at first glance no real relationship to the original Watchmen, which has been a complaint that a lot of sort of hardcore fans have been making, which is that this is not the Watchmen that I wanted to see or that I was used to. What is this? So now we're starting to kind of get these tentative branches out and these ties of how it all kind of plays in together. I loved her joke, Blake's joke, which begins with a false start about a girl throwing a brick into the air, which is a common trope, this false brick thing in jokes. And after she throws the brick in the air, it goes on to detail 3 heroes who are essentially sent to hell after arriving at the pearly gates and being questioned by God on what they have used their abilities for. Is that God has given them these abilities, and now that they've gone through life and they're at the pearly gates, the decision's going to be made of if they're going to heaven or hell. So God's asking them, what have they used their abilities for? And she uses this joke to sort of outline Night Owl, Ozymandias, and Dr. Manhattan and her experiences with them within the canon of the Watchmen universe. So there's one who had the ability to make amazing technology, who went to hell for killing no one, killing not enough people, and being unable to make sacrifices for the greater good. This is Night Owl 2, who she had her relationship with after Dr. Manhattan. We have one who is the smartest man in the world and goes to hell after he kills 3 million people with a fake squid attack, so they'll stop fighting each other and join together to fight the squid. That is Ozymandias' character. And then we learn about a blue god with actual superpowers, who she says fell in love a couple of times, one of which being with her, walked across the sun, won the Vietnam War, did all these things, but that this one is already in hell, and that ultimately he believes that humanity doesn't matter. And this is obviously the Dr. Manhattan character. And I feel like we learn from this joke that her direct interactions with the superheroes changed her, and not for the better, that it made her again, very bitter, very world-weary, very wary of vigilantism, be it a superhero or be it a cop in a mask. She clearly feels that these are people, these superheroes, that made decisions, including killing people, feeling that they were doing the right thing, thinking that they were the good guys, and you can tell that she now feels that it was the wrong thing, right? And the joke ends with the aforementioned brick that was thrown in the air coming down and hitting God, killing him, after the little girl who threw it makes her way to the pearly gates herself. And she clearly is the girl in the joke who, in my opinion, sees herself as someone who is set out to destroy the system of vigilantism for both cops and superheroes, a killer of gods, so to speak. I feel like this is the way that she's being framed in the context of this joke, and I thought that it was just a great introduction to Laurie Blake's character. I really, really, really was feeling this episode. I also felt like the introduction of a character sort of outside of our already established ecosystem here in Tulsa was a really great opportunity to depict the personality shifts of the police officers with these masks. The police clearly prefer to have them on, and we see in particular how they adopt these personas when they have the mask down versus when they have them up, because we see Blake's character interacting with all of them. She's coming across now I can think of his name. I know you guys can tell me. He wears the silver mask, and he's the one that does the interrogations in the pod. And we can kind of see that he has this like really menacing presence almost when it's pulled down. And she directly questions him about it, like, why are you talking to me like with the mask on? Like, we're both cops. Like, there's no reason. You know, like what's the point? Like, I'm an FBI agent. Like, we don't wear masks. Like, you know, what are you doing? And then it's almost like when he pulls the mask up to talk to her, we see him like deflate, you know? And we even see this type of thing happen later on when she's approaching other police officers and talking to them. You know, it's like the masks are giving them this sense of bravado, this sense of courage, and she's directly challenging that in a certain type of way because she does not believe in it. And again, with this use of these jokes, these introspective, kind of sarcastic, sardonic, I can't, what is the word I want? I'm going to stick with sardonic for right now, but she's telling these dark jokes, and she even gives another one when she says, like, you know how you can tell the difference between a masked cop and a vigilante? Me neither. You know, like, I just feel like I'm glad that that's being explicitly addressed, that the cops wearing masks is obviously an adoption of, you know, these vigilante techniques. Meanwhile, those same vigilantes themselves are outlaws, you know, and I really appreciate that that's not just going untalked about and unnoticed as we move forward in the show. It also gets confirmed to Blake that Angela is still fighting crime as Sister Knight, even though Angela maintains that she's retired. There are some very good scenes where Blake is attempting to kind of get in there and kind of crack Sister Knight, and Sister Knight is really keeping up her facade as Angela. Like, she is playing it cool as a motherfucking cucumber, like on some, bitch, you're gonna have to catch me in the act, and even then, deny. Like, even then, I'm gonna fucking deny it, you know? And there was just some great acting in those scenes between Regina King and Jean Smart, who is the actress playing Laurie Blake, of these just like two, you know, these two heads butting together. And again, this setup of this, you know, this Joker Batman, this Light versus L, this, you know, who's gonna win in the end. Regina King better win in the end, but I like the way that they're setting, you know, they're sort of setting it up. There was also a funeral scene for the police chief in this episode, which I was really happy to see. We had like some very emotional scenes with Regina King, where she reveals that after the attack on the police, both of them made a pact of, you know, this is what you're gonna say at my funeral if I die, which I thought was very, very, very well done, and a good way of showing the emotional attachment that they did have to one another. 7K attempts to infiltrate and blow the whole thing up. A terrorist has a bomb strapped to himself that's like tied to his heart. They also utilized the classic sort of Watchmen clock, doomsday clock symbols, where there's a ticking, as we, the audience, see 7K kind of like digging in from underneath and then coming out saying, you know, the chief was like a race traitor, and like, we kill race traitors, you know, we're gonna blow the whole thing up. Laurie Blake shoots the terrorist, and Sister Knight throws him into the chief's grave with the coffin on top to temper the explosion, which was motherfucking hardcore as fuck. And seeing them almost working together, you know, working in tandem to handle this situation, to encapsulate it, again, played into that. A lot of this episode felt like this Laurie Blake character testing Sister Knight and feeling her out and seeing, you know, like, you're still in vigilantism. Meanwhile, at the same time, it's almost like you are also still Silk Spectre. Like, you're still using a lot of the tools that you clearly picked up during your superheroism, even though now you're a FBI agent, you know, fighting vigilantes. Like, in a lot of ways, it's almost like you're not retired either. So I like how the show is playing around with these concepts of people that are saying they're retired, they're saying they're done, they're having all these feelings, they're having all these emotions about, you know, fighting crime and being involved in superheroism, and at the same time not being able to let it go. Because I do think that it's a very honest portrayal, in my opinion, of like what it would be like if real people really did decide to do this. It'd be very messy and traumatic, and I think there would be tons of people walking around with PTSD trying to figure out, you know, what are they doing, and are they doing the right thing, and are they doing the wrong thing, or are they doing the wrong thing? In another scene after the funeral, Blake comes to the chief's grave at night and finds Angela there, and it's just like this unrelenting test, you know. We, the audience, know that Sister Knight was there when the night that the chief died, and Blake is just like asking her all these questions, asking her about the closet, you know. Oh, there was a fucking a space in the back of the closet that was empty. Oh, and you were the last person that was there, you know, like, just like sniffing, like, I'm gonna get you. Like, she mentions, I don't know if you guys are having an affair, I don't know, which I'm glad whatever that tension was between Angela and the chief was addressed, but I still hope it's not revealed that they were having an affair. If that does get revealed at any moment, I will be extremely disappointed. Blake throws it out there that she knows that Angela is Sister Knight. She knows that the chief was there. She knows that her and the chief think that they're probably good guys, but at the same time, we learn from the joke how Blake feels about the good guys, the people that are doing vigilantism work as the good guys. We already know that she's very bitter and jaded with her previous experiences, and so she's like, I'm onto you, and I'm gonna get you, and just very fantastic tension in these scenes, and I hope that she does remain a strong presence as this season unfolds, despite the fact that I'm sure we're gonna go back to Sister Knight, sort of as our main protagonist and following her story. I really like the introduction of this character that ties back into the canon. The acting was great. Jean Smart was a very smart choice. Introducing the Silk Spectre, I think, was really, really strong, and I really enjoyed the whole trajectory of this episode. Before I hop into the brief, minuscule little bit of bad, I also want to say that we continue seeing Jeremy Irons with his fucking robots, creations, clones, whatever they are. There's a lot of them. He's definitely creating them. It seems like they're reenacting some type of day repeatedly. They're singing some song to him. It seems that he's possibly attempting to send them into space. We also see him clash with a game warden while hunting. It's very mysterious. And we learn via a letter that he writes to the warden that he is under confinement, which makes me wonder if he was perhaps on some type of maybe off-planet prison for his crimes against Earth via the squid attack, and is trying to get back, and maybe he's like testing out different techniques or ways of possibly getting back on his robots or clones or whatever that is. We also actually see him in the Ozymandias costume, and he reveals that his name is Adrian Veidt, so it is confirmed that that's who he is. And I mean, even though they're keeping it vague, the way that they're playing out his storyline is almost reminding me of like some Twilight Zone type of like tension, where you're just going to get fed a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit until you get to the end. I'm enjoying that for now, but I want them to be really careful with that, because if the final reveal of what's going on is underwhelming, it's going to really deflate what they're building up right now. So I just hope they know what they're doing. But I haven't been let down yet, so I'm going with it. I'm going to use that to segue a little bit into the little bit of bad. And it's sort of similar to the Jeremy Irons situation. It's not really bad, but it's just open-ended. What the fuck is up with this giant magnet or whatever the fuck it is? At the end of episode 2, Sister Knight's grandfather, the dude in the wheelchair who may or may not have strung up the chief, we don't really know, is floated away from Angela in a car by a big-ass magnet. And I think that same car is dropped down in front of Blake at the end of episode 3. The dude in the wheelchair is not in it. It's just like, what the fuck is up with this fucking magnet? Before the dude in the wheelchair got carried away, when Sister Knight was attempting to arrest him and take him in, he said, like, I have friends in high places or something like that, and it got carried away. And then after we see Blake's Silk Spectre communicating with Dr. Manhattan via this phone booth all episode, when the car gets dropped back down, I feel like it's kind of implied that she believes that that's Dr. Manhattan communicating back with her or something of that nature, which, if the old man was trying to imply that his friends in high places means he's friends with Dr. Manhattan. I hope it gets explained. I'm sure it will be explained, but as of right now, I'm just like, okay, what the fuck is up with this magnet? Like, what's going on? Like, I really hope it's explained in episode 4. Otherwise, if it's not, it might have dragged on the mystery around this little thing a bit too far for me. So we'll see in tomorrow's episode if this is explained. But aside from that, another solid episode. Really, really, really digging Watchmen still. Really enjoyed the introduction of Silk Spectre. And now my neighbor's dogs are barking. So I'm going to use that as a time to say goodbye. Let me know what you guys think of Watchmen if you're watching it in the comments. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.